see you there. We have a beautiful day of class today. Although, I'm not really quite sure if Mr. Rogers is canceled or not.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the court. I am James John Moran IV, and I'll be representing Christopher Columbus in this very important case.
Alright, so we're going to get started on page 12, looking at the Treaty of Versailles, going through and highlighting or underlining any clauses that could fuel German aggression following World War I. We're going to start with notes on page 13. You'll fill in information for each of these bullet points as we go through. So we'll start with fascism as a concept. There are a lot of different characteristics of fascism. I would say the most important that you see here would be that it's an authoritarian system. There's a lot of censorship by the state and regulation of the economy by the state. You can still have a capitalist society that is regulated by a fascist state. And of course, nationalism, racism. When we're looking at the rise of fascism in Germany, this all ties back to the success of Adolf Hitler in the 1932 elections. He was the head of a party called the Nationalist Socialist German Workers' Party. And he really sought to energize people who felt disenfranchised by economic depression that resulted from the Treaty of Versailles and Germany's involvement in World War I. And he was able to find scapegoats within German society to help elevate those who felt most targeted by the recent failures of the German government. Take a moment to read through the information that's on this slide and summarize it in your notes. Fascism in Italy. This is a clip from The Office. You may or may not remember when Dwight gives a speech to, I think it's something like the paper salesman of some sort of tri-state area, some nonsense organization. But he quotes Mussolini, Karl Marx, and other leaders from the era in his speech. Go ahead and see if you can find it if you're interested. Otherwise, what we see in Italy following World War I is them feeling slighted by the Treaty of Versailles. They technically fought along the Allied powers in World War I, but didn't feel recognized by any of the agreements that were made upon the signing of the treaty. We also saw nationalism being used by Mussolini to incite Italians to restore the glory of Rome. We see that with Khmer Rouge calling back to the Khmer Empire later on in the 1970s. Often the most powerful empire that the region has experienced is the basis of nationalist pride for these movements we see in the 1900s. Economically, we see that Mussolini and his party are supported mainly by middle class and landowners. That makes it a little bit different from the rise of fascism in Germany. And we also had a police state, or some sort of secret police like we saw in Russia under Stalin that helped enforce Mussolini's plans and ideas. When we look at fascism in Japan, this is debated by historians as to whether or not Japanese government between World War I and World War II can be characterized as fascist. Those historians who do make an argument for this point to right-wing statism rising after the close of World War I. We're going to see nationalism fueling their desire to ally themselves with Germany and begin to imperialize throughout the Pacific Ocean to get revenge on Allied powers. Like we see in Germany, we have state-controlled capitalism to promote the growth of industry. This comes slightly after the huge growth of Japanese industry we saw right at the beginning of the 1900s, but it is continued by fascist leaders between World War I and World War II. And we saw a police state emerge in order to enforce the policies of the wartime government. In Chile, we've seen a long history of military dictatorship in Chile. Later this unit, we're going to look at the rise of democracy and the process of de-democratization in many different countries throughout Latin America. Fascism in Chile was introduced more or less directly by German immigrants to the region. There was a coup attempted by Chileans with German heritage in 1938. And in the same way Jewish people were scapegoated in Germany, we see the same process in Chile. And you have this proletarian working class rising up against oppressors at the state level. Their party was referred to as the National Socialism Party, which is the same as Hitler's party. For nationalism in the interwar period, you'll see a set of documents called Interwar Nationalism. Use each document to fill out the diagram with the rise up to the nationalist movement itself, and the impacts of it.